Hey, dating coach Rick Soetebier is on the show today. Maybe I should hire him.
Henry, you're a voiceover bot. We're not supposed to go out on dates.
I wish I had known that, after buying my Luke Skywalker pajamas. A little something for the ladies, you know?
Oh, Henry, the force is not strong with you. Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, please don't disturb the yak.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Bruce. And hey there, all you rebels of the Sherpalution, past, present, and future. If you're just starting to listen today, it's me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. Of course it is. All the past and present ones know that already. Little hint, little hint. Welcome to the show. And this week, I know you're waiting for it. It's a theme week.
It's theme week. It's theme week. It's theme week.
And this week's theme is relationships. We've done a couple of relationship shows already, but always from different perspectives. There was one from a single lady, one from a married lady, and now we have one from a guy who's divorced. And always different, interesting perspectives, and we like to present all those perspectives to you. I'm sure you're wondering about our guest.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
Well, I'm glad that you asked, Mr. Bruce. Our guest today, his name is Rick Soetebier, and he's got a website, and he is a dating coach. And we had a lot of fun talking about relationships, and he was very honest about his own relationships as well. But I got to say, among all the seriousness, we actually had a moment of levity, and you'll actually hear it about 28 minutes into the interview. What happened is the bulb on my lamp went out while we were talking. So it almost looked like I was turning the light out on him and I was done talking with him. And we both just started laughing a lot. I was glad that he was such a good sport about it and a really cool guy about it too. It was just a lot of fun. He even said, yeah, keep it in there. It was funny. So just in case you're wondering what happens at that point where there's just complete giddiness, that's what it's all about. But you will learn a lot hearing what he has to say. A lot of interesting opinions as well. Why don't we head on down and we will play my interview with Rick. Okay, this is for all the single rebels out there, men and women, or anybody in between there. My guest today is a dating coach, and he is also the co-author of Dating Backwards. And we're going to talk to him about the world of dating and his book and other things that are going on in his life. Say hello to Mr. Rick Soetebier. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Jim?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And thanks for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a treat. Thank you.
So, I was reading a little bit about your bio on your website. I'll let you fill in the blanks or kind of take it from there. Now, originally, your parents had divorced.
Yep. I grew up in a divorced household. They got it was probably about 12 years old, 11 years old when they divorced. And like most families, when you go through that as a kid, it's kind of traumatic. My dad was a hard man to begin with. And my mom she suffered from depression and a lot of different things. So, it was a typical dysfunctional household. When I got married, I was bound and determined not to make some of the mistakes that they had made. I was bound and determined to make my marriage last. Well, that relationship lasted about 25 years and that was it. There were a lot of issues. I won't go into all the personal details. I made mistakes. My ex made mistakes. And I think, when you go through something like that, you have to recognize your contribution to the problems. And as I look back, I could see the mistakes I had made the red flags I had ignored in the very beginning of that relationship. And don't misunderstand me. We had some really good times as a couple. I've got a wonderful daughter from that relationship that I never would have had otherwise. So, I don't want to degrade that relationship in any way. It's just, there were issues that we just couldn't overcome. And so the logical step for me was to move on and to get a divorce. And I think it was better for both of us. So, then it evolved. There's so many backstories to this that, coming from a broken home, I grew up until I was 52 years old, my dad called me stupid and an idiot. And I never realized how emotionally punishing that was. We grow up as kids, or at least I grew up as a kid, and our saying was, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, now that I'm 63 years old, I start to recognize that, yeah, words really can hurt. And a lot of studies have shown the same thing, that, and it was verbal abuse. And it wasn't until I was 52 years old and I stood up to him that I finally felt liberated. And it's a whole story about how I was able to break that hold, or that grip that my father had on me. In this time, I'm a financial advisor, and just the last couple of years, I'm in my financial planning practice. Going through my divorce, not being happy as a financial advisor. I loved what I did. I loved my clients, but I just lost the passion for the industry or for the business. So I'm kind of wandering through life, and a friend of mine, and it turned out being my co-author on the book, she challenged me one day and she says, "What's your passion?" And, we talked a little bit, but it took me about a week or 10 days to really formulate what my passion was. And I had come to recognize that I've been a student of self and relationship improvement for, well, at that time, well over 30 years. It's over 35 years now. And I've come to realize that I was such a student of self and relationship improvement. People that didn't even know me would walk up to me and start talking about their relationships. And I'd start saying, "Oh, well, you need to do this and this and this, and that'll help move you forward." And it just dawned on me that because I had gone through a divorce, because Penny, my co-author, had gone through a divorce a couple of years earlier also, I started recognizing all the mistakes that people make in general. And I thought, well, why not write a book and help people make better decisions about who they date and the relationships they get into? And that was, when we got back on the phone about a week or 10 days later, we were talking, and I started laying out the premise for a book. She started throwing ideas at me, and I stopped and I said, "Why don't you help me write the book?" She stopped and said, "Okay." And 2 or 3 days later, we had a working outline, and we were off to the races. And a couple of months into the writing of the book, I got to retire. I can't be a financial planner. This is what I want to do when I grow up. And it's been quite a journey since then, publishing the book and speaking and coaching. And that's my story in a nutshell. Yeah.
Well, since you're talking about the book, explain what dating backward means for those who are listening.
Well, that's a great question, because it really has two meanings. First of all, most people date backwards. And what I mean by that is they'll go out, they'll get a divorce, or they'll be widowed, or even single, but they'll start dating somebody without being crystal clear about what they want in a relationship. I mean, they might have some vague ideas about what they're looking for, but they're not clear. They're going to say, look, this guy's kind of cute. He makes me laugh. They don't recognize potential flaws, or he doesn't have everything, or she doesn't have everything that they're looking for. So that's where we start dating backward, because we're not crystal clear about what we want in a relationship. When I talk to people, more people can tell me what they don't want than what they do want. And if you study psychology or you study human nature, the fact is that when you focus on negative, that's exactly what you're going to find. And when people know more about what they don't want, that's what they keep finding. The second meaning of that is that I take everybody back to the beginning. The idea is to go back to the very basics. Like I said, become crystal clear about what you want. Know what your deal breakers are. Know what you bring to the table. And those are the very foundation of moving forward. And then you start developing a relationship from there. The interesting thing is, and I've done a lot of study on this, that we all get caught up in infatuation and raging hormones when we get into a new relationship. And that infatuation can start very quickly. I know I go off the deep end very quickly, so I have to heed my own advice. I have to be careful about what I do and the ladies that I date. The idea is that we want to be able to pull you back from that infatuation and those raging hormones so that you can take an honest look and start looking at the person you're dating and start noticing if there's any red flags. And I can contend that if you're paying attention, you'll start noticing the red flags within the first 30 days of dating somebody. And I know there will be plenty of people out there saying, oh, good Lord, I can see those red flags on the first date. And there are a lot of one and dones. But there are going to be great people that you're going to date. And, it's a second, third, fourth, fifth date down the road that you'll start noticing things. Because realistically, most people try to present their best self up front. And then it isn't until you start to get a little comfortable with somebody that facade starts to drop and you start to see some of the true characteristics. And usually if you're good, if you're paying attention, you can start to see those things. You can hear it in the words they use, in the comments they make, in their actions, whether they're on time, or you can start to sense whether somebody's telling you the truth or whether there might be something hidden in the background there. So that's where the name of the book came from.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's when it comes to meeting somebody, and like you said, sometimes you have to give people that chance. You got to kind of look past the first date because you don't know, maybe the person had a bad day the first day. They may just be nervous daters, they get very nervous. And then once they get comfortable around you, you see their true colors.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. So many times people make a blanket judgment after a first date. Now, obviously there are first dates that just go south right from the very beginning, and it's not going to go any further. But there are times when it's worth a second or third date just to get to know the person a little bit. Because you're right, there are nervous daters. They're as much with guys as it is with women. They're nervous. They're on the shy type or the introverted side, and have a problem with a conversation, and any number of things that make that first date a problem.
And I can relate to the title of your book. I always I got married late in life. Mm-hmm. And I kind of looked at dating as being in a funnel where you're at the top of the funnel first, where you're dating just about anybody. And then as time goes by, you're eliminating, okay, this person does this. That's not going to work for me. Or, and it goes both ways too. I'm sure I was in other people's funnels getting kicked out as well.
And some rightfully so, some maybe not.
That's true.
And and what I always try to tell people, when you start looking at the person, whether they're a good match for you, if they don't have everything on your must-have list or your deal breaker list, it doesn't make them a bad person. It just means they're not the right one for you. What I try to teach people is that, when you start recognizing that someone's not right for you, don't stick around. We're only on this earth for a short period of time. Don't waste it in a relationship that, is going to go a year, 2 years, 5 years. And the whole time, this isn't really where I want to be. Because the longer you're there, the more enmeshed you get, the more the emotions get intertwined, and then it becomes an even bigger problem down the road in trying to separate, break up, and move on. It takes just that much longer to heal from ending a longer term relationship.
And there's a difference between a deal breaker quality versus I want to be with a person who's a carbon copy of me, because really it's opposites that attract.
Opposites do attract, but from some of the studies that I've read, those relationships also end. They last an average of 5 years. And don't misunderstand me. There are opposites that they make it, but the majority of them don't. And so I'm not a big believer in the opposites attract theory. And it's fun for a while, but the things that initially were cute and sweet and made you giggle eventually wear on you. They become the deal breakers. They're the things that make you crazy. You can giggle about which way the toilet paper should go on the roll or hang on the holder, or where you squeeze the tube of toothpaste, and in the near term, it doesn't make any difference. Long term, those are the little things that will make you crazy. And I use those two as very simple examples. It's, if the tube of toothpaste isn't, if you squeeze from the bottom and she squeezes from the middle, well, just get her own damn tube of toothpaste. So there are ways of working those things out. But I believe that when you're looking for an extraordinary mate or looking for an extraordinary relationship, and I sometimes interchange extraordinary relationship with soulmate relationship. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a soulmate." That's just silly. Or like I used to believe that, it's just a goony woman thing. The women are looking for their soul. But when you've had that experience, there are soulmates. Guys, let me tell you, there are soulmates out there. And, we can use extraordinary relationship. But when you're looking for that extraordinary relationship, you want to take all the roadblocks out of your way, as many of the roadblocks. And I truly believe, you've got to develop an intellectual, a spiritual, an emotional, and a physical connection. And we all get the physical, the sexual side of a physical connection, but we've got to be attracted to our mate. There's that physical appearance. So all those things need to be in place. I believe that you need to speak similar love languages. And if you're not familiar with love languages, go check out the book, The 5 Love Languages. It's a wonderful book on how to communicate. And that was one of the problems in my marriage. My ex and I spoke different love languages, and that was hard to overcome. I mean, theoretically, you can learn how to speak other languages, but you never do it as fluently as you do your natural languages. Then there's chemistry. You got to throw that in there too. So, all these moving parts, all these components are all important. And, you've got to have similar morals and values. And again, these are all critical things that can throw roadblocks into a relationship. And the more roadblocks or the more hurdles that you have to overcome, the harder it is to maintain that relationship. My premise or my thought is that more problems you can eliminate up front. The easier the relationship, the easier your marriage is going to be down the road. Life is going to throw things at you. Things are going to happen. Somebody's going to lose a job. Somebody's going to get sick. Somebody's going to die. There's going to be problems in the marriage. And the more you have in common up front, the stronger that bond becomes. And it gives you the strength to work through those things. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy down the road. It doesn't mean you can just waltz through life happy. I'm not trying to promote unicorns and rainbows and butterflies. That's just not real life. Even the best relationships go through problems. But the more work you do up front, the more time you spend searching for that right person, the easier the load is, or the easier the work is down the road.
I found it interesting that you were a financial planner before doing this, because when I originally read your biography, I was saying, what a smooth transition, because really you're teaching people how to invest their money and invest their time and putting effort into their future, where you're really doing the same thing as a dating coach.
Absolutely. And that was an amazingly simple transition. I went from, and part of being a financial advisor was taking the emotion, or trying to take the emotion out of some very emotional financial decisions for people. When you talk to people about their money, you want to see a lady break down when you tell her that she and her husband can't retire in 5 years because the market is down, or they get very emotional, or they start telling you their story that they don't want to end up like their parents. Working with clients on a financial level, it was taking some of the emotion out of those decisions. And that's what I try to do. I've transitioned that into my coaching, and that we want to take as much of the emotion out of some of those decisions as possible. Now, you're never going to get rid of all of the infatuation and raging hormones. Those are all natural occurring events, especially in the beginning. And then when the hormones settle down and the infatuation settles down, that's when the lights start coming on. And if you're not with the right person, that's when you start to recognize, oh crap, what did I do? You know? So we want to make sure that again, you're making better choices up front, and the whole idea is to back away from some of those emotions and look at everything about your mate and your partner and say, is this the man or is this the woman that I want to be with? Can I see myself spending the rest of my life with this woman or this man?
You were married for, you said 25 years?
Yeah, we had a relationship for 25 years. We lived together for 8 and married for 17. So,
but after that, what was it like getting back into the dating world? You really had a new pair of eyes to look at that.
Like everybody that gets divorced and gets back into the dating world, I had these rose-colored glasses on, and I'm thinking to myself, good Lord, I'll start dating. I'll find my soulmate in 9 months and I'll live happily ever after. Well, that hasn't happened. I've been divorced for 10 years now. And don't misunderstand, I've had a couple of really nice relationships in there, but I still haven't found the one. And, and I'm not making excuses, but over the last couple of years, I've had a situation come up where I travel significantly. So I'm in Kansas City about half the year or 7 months out of the year. And then I spend my summers up in northern Michigan and northern Wisconsin. So that makes life it makes dating a little more difficult, but it's not insurmountable. It just throws another little hurdle in there. But yeah, just getting back into the dating world was really interesting. And I had, right after I was divorced, a woman that I was interested in dating. She and I had talked, and we were talking while I was separated. And she said, well, I won't date you until you're divorced. And so a few days after my divorce was final, I called her and said, let's talk about getting together. And my divorce is final. She said, no, I'm not going to date you for at least a year. Because you're so fresh. You're going to be a different person in a year. And I thought, we talked a little bit more and then ended the conversation. Got off the phone. I said, man, she's dodging me. Just absolutely dodging me. She was right. It took about a year for me to really start regaining who I was. Because when we're in a long-term relationship, in a marriage, and it doesn't necessarily need, you can be in a long-term relationship if you invest quite a number of years in that relationship. You morph, you change to adapt to that relationship. One of the things that I lost in my marriage was my sense of humor, because my ex didn't like my sense of humor. So I had to be very careful about what I said and what I joked about. And I'm still finding my sense of humor 10 years later. So it takes time to rediscover who you are. It took me time to just rediscover who I am. It was about 13 months after my divorce, I was talking with my best friend, and he said, you haven't sounded this good in a long, long time. And then it dawned on me, yeah. I'm laughing again. I'm having some fun, and I have changed. I'm not that as reserved and confined as I was in my marriage. So
we were saying earlier that people's reactions when you go on a date with them, that you tell them that you're a dating coach.
Oh yeah, that's always a good sign to. If I've come to learn that, number one, women become very skeptical of my being on a dating site. And I'm on and off from time to time. And because of my travels, sometimes it's easier to meet somebody on the road as opposed to meeting somebody locally. But when they ask what you do, in fact, I just had this conversation twice in the last 2 days that I told the gal. She asked what I did, and I knew where the conversation was going to go. I said, I'm a dating coach. She said, no. Really? What do you do? So I gave her my name. I wrote down my name, Rick Soetebier. Google me. And she came back, oh my God, I have egg on my face. But there was one I met a couple of months ago, and we were on the phone, and she asked me what I did, and I said I'm a dating and relationship coach, and she just burst into laughter. And I'm thinking, really? You want to start going into hysterical laughter when I tell you what I do? Obviously, and I've just gotten to the point that if they're going to laugh, okay, we're done. And it's nothing against them. It's just, yeah, if you're not going to believe me, or you're not going to take what I do seriously, okay, then I can't take this potential relationship seriously. I've done this enough that I'm very, very leery. I'm very skeptical of letting that information out. And I've tried telling them that I own real estate, which I do. I'm not lying, but it's softening the blow, or tell them I'm a life coach, and yada yada yada. And I'm not being truthful. So I'm a dating coach. Love me or hate me, but or somewhere in between. But it's that's always a little touchy to see how they react, and that does make a big impact on me on whether I proceed with the relationship or proceed getting to know them. There's no relationship there; you're just getting to know somebody. So, yeah, it's a challenge.
And it does tie into some of the important things that you should be doing with someone. You're being honest with them. They're either going to accept it or they're not going to accept it, and then at least your funnel gets a little bit smaller after that.
Yeah, you're weeding. Yeah, you're weeding them out real quickly. But that's one of the nice things about online. What I find nice about online dating is you can weed out a lot of people without ever having to go out, without ever having to meet. You can have a few text conversations, a few phone conversations, and you can quickly determine, just by the questions they ask or the answers they give, whether this is someone you really want to pursue any further. You don't need to walk into a date with a list of interrogation questions. There's nothing worse than a date where you're being interrogated. And I have been interrogated. Ladies, when you go out on a date with a guy, don't bring a list of questions. Just pay attention. If you've met him online, do a quick brief or a quick review of his profile. Look at your text, review your text messages, and see what he's told you about himself. And then remember those things and walk into your date with those things. You can ask him the same questions over again. Odds are he's forgotten most of what he's told you anyway. And if he's honest, he's going to be telling you the same thing. But if he's dishonest, you can pick up on that very quickly. And if there's any dishonesty at all, you either call him out on it or call it off and say, no, we're done, because your story's not lining up. And then then you're going to have, I just say, next.
I guess people have to understand the difference between somebody who's overly particular versus someone who really knows what they want, because there is a fine line. Like I'll explain. Well, okay. So we're on the same page. Somebody who wants somebody who looks like Chris Hemsworth versus, someone who's just looking for somebody who, like, this is somebody that I could spend time with and have a lot of laughs.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I generally don't have a problem. If you want somebody to be Chris Hemsworth double, yeah, that's going to be difficult. But if you have particular physical characteristics that you're looking for, it might be a certain height, it might be a certain color hair. Although with women, they can change the color of their hair at the drop of a hat. And I look at my daughter, and the first time I saw her with orange hair, it was like, oh my God, what did you do? But now, she comes in with orange hair. Cool. She comes in with blonde hair. Cool. She comes in with purple hair. Cool. It's just, she is who she is. And those types of things, while we can want them, sometimes from a guy's perspective, those things can change at the drop of a hat. But there might be some physical characteristics that you do look for. You might love blue eyes, but don't discount green eyes or hazel or brown, because the rest of the package may be there. I had a friend of mine that she and I were talking about who she wanted to date. And she was very particular. She wouldn't date anybody that didn't have a PhD. That starts narrowing down the field quite a bit. But she moved to Dallas and she found him. So, it was, and so I will never discount whatever somebody wants. And we have to distinguish between the must-haves, which I consider are non-negotiable characteristics, the things that you will not go into another relationship unless they have these things. And then there are the would-be nice-to-haves. And the common example I use is, it would be nice to find someone that makes $1 million a year. That's, for most people, that's a would be nice to have. It's not a
concrete requirement. Yeah.
Yeah. Now there are going to be a certain caliber of people that are going to say, yeah, if you don't make $1 million a year, you're out. Because, if they're making a significant amount of money, they may want somebody in their relationship that is equally able to produce, so that there's not a financial dependency on each other.
I know you've done a couple of videos, and they can probably see them through your website or maybe through your Facebook page about things that people look for when dating.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just did a 2-part series last week and this week on what men are looking for and what women are looking for. It just broke this morning. The 10 things women look for in a man just came out this morning. And then last week was the 8 things men look for in a woman. And so those are both on my website. They're on my YouTube channel. And on my website, not only do you get you can watch the video, but you can read the blog. I provide the blog on my website, whatever you prefer. Or you can just click off the video and listen to the sound. They're about 7 or 8 minutes, 9 minutes long. 10 minutes is generally my longest blog or my longest video. So they're quick reads or quick views.
Sorry, my lights went off. You're like, okay, I'm done. I'm going home.
It's almost like there's something going on in the background. Do we need to get the power checked, or?
That'll work.
There you go.
Here we are. We're back.
Yeah.
I didn't want to think. I was like, okay, I'm done. Let Rick finish the interview.
Yeah, it's like dating when you're kids. The porch light's going on and off. So.
And it wasn't like a cue or something like that.
Okay, Rick, you're done.
All right, let's get back on topic here. You probably have like a top 3 at least things for what makes a great first date and what makes a bad first date.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, is to go into the date with no expectations. Go into the date and just looking to get to know somebody, get to learn about them. Don't have any expectations that this is going to be your soulmate, that this is going to be your last first date, or that you're going to get your last first kiss on this date. Don't set any expectations. Go in with an open mind. Second, especially for women, have your first date outfit picked out. And so you know what you're going to wear. You know what makeup you're going to wear with the outfit. I know that sounds a little crazy, but and man, you can do that too. And me, I'm a more casual dresser, just a white dress shirt, jeans and boots, and I'm out the door. But ladies tend to stress over what they're going to wear. And one of the things that I've learned is, if you have your first date outfit, hang it up in the closet so you know where it's at. You don't have to worry what shoes. You don't have to worry about the makeup. And that takes a lot of stress off of that first date. Probably out of safety, make sure that somebody knows, if this is somebody, especially if you're meeting them off of the internet, for the first time, make sure that that you have family or friends that know where you're going, know who you're going to be with, and know when to expect you home. And you might even set up an emergency phone call where somebody calls and says, "Yeah, are you okay?" And just checking on you to make sure everything's okay. There are some safety things, but beyond that, don't make it a big dinner date. Don't make it a movie date. just do coffee or cocktails. Just keep it simple. If you go to, if a lot of times when you go into restaurants, sometimes it can be very difficult to hear because of the noise level. And, if it's not going well, if you're sitting through dinner, it can be the dinner from hell. So, if you do coffee and cocktails, if it's going great, you can order a couple of cocktails and talk and talk and talk and then go out for dinner. Or if it's not going well, 30 minutes, oh, look at the time, I've got to go. You can be out the door. You can give yourself an out, or you can give yourself the option of making it a lovely evening. So those would probably be the top 3 or 4 things to make a date good. And
I know that there's a free booklet that people can download at your website.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll give you the links to that. I've got a PDF that I hand out. It's about 6 or 7 pages long. It's called The 5 Biggest Dating and Relationship Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. Just a great thumbnail sketch of, toxic relationships, making sure that you have your must-have list. Just important things that most people ignore, most people don't pay attention to. And so, that'll give you a leg up on your next date.
Why don't you give everybody your website so they know how to get in touch with you?
My website is ricksoetebier.com. And I hope you're going to put the link down, because it's not spelled like it sounds. If you think of soda and beer, that's how you pronounce it. That's not how you spell it. It's S like Sam, OETEB like boy, IER, and .com. And you can look at my book. I have a book, the book Dating Backward. Just go to the resource tab, and you can read part of it there. And if you'd like to order it, just click the button and I'll pay the shipping. So shipping is free.
There you go. Plenty of stuff for the rebels to check out.
That's
so his
right.
name is Rick Soetebier. He is a dating expert, and we'd like to thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you so much for having me, Jim. It was wonderful.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
So if you're checking out dating podcasts, I've got a few for you to check out anyway. Of course, we have to mention our previous guests, Joanne Wilson with Is This Love, and Kealy Rider and Dating Talk with Kealy. Love those women. They're fantastic. And also we have Dateable Podcast, Deeper Dating, Dating Advice Guru Podcasts, Paging Dr. Nerdlove, the Dating Advice Girl Podcast, the Dating Den, the How to Talk to Girls Podcast, Sip and Spill, and Date Night China. Well, I guess, yeah, I might not make that date on time if it was in China. I will pick you up in 18 hours. Might be running a little late. Thank you so much to Rick Soetebier for coming by the Sherpa Chalet this week. And we will have the link to his website on the Sherpa sheet. You know, the show notes. Yeah, that thing. I hope you had a lot of fun listening. And we will have author Steve Stoliar next week. And Steve has written 2 really interesting books that have to do with classic Hollywood. He actually lived in Groucho Marx's house for the last couple of years of Groucho's life, and he did write a book, and he's actually written another book about writer Howie Storm called The Imperfect Storm. Let's put it this way. If you watch TV during the 70s and the 80s, Howie probably worked with these people. Any TV show, that kind of career. And Steve wrote a book about it. So be sure to check out that show. And if you want to follow me on social media, it's Sherpalution. That's your keyword for Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And you can listen to the show on your favorite podcast app, even in iHeartRadio or Pandora or Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all of those, and so much more. Or you can even listen on my website, Sherpalution.com, and you can check the website out for the link to the Sherpa Shop. And I hope that you will be shopping at the Sherpa Shop and shopping for good And these ships are sailing, and I don't know, I'm giving myself a tongue twister. Anyway, Mr. Bruce, we know that you never have a problem getting a date for a Saturday night. I was wondering if you could show everyone the door, and please don't get too many phone numbers. You're going to make me look bad. Viva la Sherpalution, everybody. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?